It all started on a quiet Wednesday morning in our suburban enclave. The sun had just begun to gild the tops of the trees, and birds chirped as though nothing in the world could disturb the serene calm. But as anyone in our neighborhood knows, peace is only temporary when HOA Karen is around. Karen, a self-appointed queen of all things community rules, had been particularly vocal lately about enforcing the Homeowners Association's regulations. She had a flair for dramatics, especially when it came to anything she thought might disrupt the aesthetic harmony of the neighborhood. So, when she noticed my tool shed tucked behind the oak trees, she decided it was an eyesore. Despite the fact that it was perfectly maintained, freshly painted, and hid almost entirely behind a natural screen of hedges. What she didn't know was that my tool shed was more than just a place for rakes and hammers. It housed the neighborhood's unofficial internet hub. Long story short, years ago, I had set up a small fiber optic distribution system in my shed. It routed high-speed internet to about half the houses in the cul-de-sac. People often assumed it was a municipal service, but really it ran through my cables, switches, and servers neatly tucked in the shed, powered by a backup system that could keep it running for days without interruption. It was my little secret, a labor of love that had quietly kept the neighborhood online through storms, outages, and the occasional power grid hiccup. That Wednesday, Karen came marching down my driveway, clipboard in hand, wearing her signature scowl. "This shed is a violation," she barked. "It must be removed immediately." She didn't wait for any discussion, any negotiation, or, permission. She had already called a contractor to demolish it. The crew arrived with bulldozers, chains, and a suspiciously gleeful attitude. I had been sipping my coffee in the kitchen, watching the chaos unfold through the window. At first, I thought maybe she had finally lost her mind. But no, she was determined. Bulldozer engines roared, dirt flew, and the neatly organized shed started crumpling under the sheer power of heavy machinery. But what Karen didn't anticipate was that I had anticipated her. Before the chaos began, I had activated my backup system. Within seconds, all internet traffic that had been running through the shed rerouted to my secondary network, hidden in a disguised container behind my garage. I had redundant fiber lines, emergency power, and even an automated failover system I had designed myself. By the time the bulldozers reached the shed, the neighborhood's internet connection was uninterrupted, streaming Netflix, Zoom meetings, online classes, and even Karen's own HOA email server without a hiccup. Of course, Karen didn't know any of this. She watched with smug satisfaction as the shed collapsed, picturing herself as the hero of neighborhood law and order. Little did she know, she had just destroyed a glorified wooden facade while the real brain of the operation continued to function seamlessly elsewhere. The aftermath was priceless. My neighbors gathered, some confused, some outraged, and a few trying desperately not to laugh. When the first emails, work files, and video calls continued running smoothly despite the demolished shed, the questions started. "How is this even possible?" they murmured. "Is the internet working?" Karen, red-faced and sputtering, couldn't hide her confusion. "It should be down. The shed is gone. The system, everything," she exclaimed. That's when I finally stepped outside, casually holding my tablet. "Oh, that," I said with a small smile, showing the dashboard of my backup network. I anticipated someone might get creative with the rules, so I made a backup. The shed was just the primary node. Everything switched over automatically when it fell. The silence that followed was remarkable. Karen's face turned from furious to flustered to pale. She tried to regain authority, but my neighbors were laughing, whispering, and recording the spectacle. "Well, I didn't know," Karen stammered. But the damage to her credibility was done. She had tried to enforce the HOA rules in the most aggressive way possible, only to be outsmarted by a simple but foolproof backup system. The story spread like wildfire. For weeks afterward, Karen avoided my street entirely, and any mention of shed enforcement was met with chuckles. Meanwhile, I upgraded the system even further, adding remote monitoring, solar backup, and even a small camera that sent alerts whenever someone approached the area. Because if Karen thought she could bulldoze her way into control again, she'd have to contend with technology, strategy, and neighbors who were now quietly rooting for me. In the end, the shed was gone, but the network, my pride, the silent lifeline of the neighborhood, remained untouched. Karen may have had her bulldozer moment, but I had the last laugh. Sometimes rules are only as strong as the brains behind them, and mine had been quietly 3 steps ahead all along.